Now here is an Inside the Eye feature from our global friendly outlet sources exclusively picked for Blue Eye Media. Learn the truth behind what mainstream and opinion outlets will never say. Get the inside facts of this chronicle.
As you can see, joining me today is new media rising star Harry Sisson. Harry, great to see you.
Thank you for having me on, Mr. Acosta. It's great to be here.
Oh, no, you got to call me Jim. There's no
Jim,
way.
you want Jim? You got it. Jim. We'll go with Jim.
Jim is good. That'll just make me feel older. But Harry, you were just telling me before we got started here, this is your first Substack Live.
This is my first Substack Live. I've been on Substack for 3 or 4 months, I think, something along that. But I've kind of just been like tweeting, I guess, as you would call it, just like posting notes and stuff like that. So I've never done a Substack Live. I actually just launched my newsletter today. So it's like perfect timing. And I really appreciate the platform and allowing to like flesh out thoughts in greater detail than you normally would on like other platforms. So I'm, excited to be here.
Yeah, no, totally. And I noticed earlier today you were writing on Substack. You posted about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man who was living in Maryland until he was scooped up by the Trump administration and sent down to that notorious mega prison in El Salvador. And I guess we could just get into this. I mean, one thing we should note, the Washington Post reported earlier today that the wife of Kilmar has been moved to a safe house by supporters after U.S. officials posted a court document on social media that included the family's address. Jennifer Vasquez Sura told the Washington Post that she began fearing for her safety after all of that. And you wrote about this on Substack. You wrote about Kilmar, and you wrote, normally the unwavering support of Donald Trump by the MAGA movement might make the average person worried that the plurality of people who put him into office have lost touch with reality. But in a remarkable twist, it turns out that most people think Donald Trump has gone too far in these removals. I mean, you can call them deportations, but they're not really deportations because they haven't had proper proceedings. And you point out that Aaron Blake in the Washington Post cited a YouGov poll that shows Americans oppose deporting people who don't have criminal convictions to El Salvador by more than a 2-to-1 margin. And you also wrote about, despite the distressing about face by Democrats like Gavin Newsom, we should care. You went on to say, basically, we should care about this because it's the right thing to do. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think that post the 2024 election, the Democrats have really done a lot of soul searching. And a lot of people have just landed on the idea of like, just appeal to whatever's popular, appeal to what we know is a winning message. Don't get into the nuances, the intricacies of some of these bigger, broader topics that involve the courts, the law, due process and things like that. I think that that's a fundamentally incorrect philosophy. I think that Democrats, we should have principle. And when we see something wrong, in the form of Mr. Abrego Garcia getting deported with no due process, no court hearing, no ability to even hear the evidence that the government has against him, we should call that out. It might not be like politically sexy. It's not a phrase that you can fit on a yard sign in 3 words, but it's the right thing to do. And it makes America better and obviously pushes back on the injustices that the Trump administration is perpetuating right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said this and the way you said it, because that this has been on my mind too. There seems to be this, and I wrote about this over the weekend. There seems to be this debate over how this should be sliced and diced politically, and there's conversation in the political press about how Trump sees this, and he sees it advantageous for everybody to be talking about Kilmar instead of what's happening with the stock market and the economy and so on. But to me, it just boils down to, is this right? Is it right to just take this guy off the streets without due process? Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? I don't know. That's why you have a process. That's why you have hearings. That's why you put him in front of a judge. And Trump put this on Truth Social. He said, we cannot give everyone a trial because to do so would take, without exaggeration, 200 years, which of course is an exaggeration. We would need hundreds of thousands of trials for the hundreds of thousands of illegals we were sending out of the country. So, I mean, he's obviously lying there. But when you have the president of the United States saying, well, we can't do due process, I'm sorry, that should be a major headline.
Yeah, I mean, that is terrifying coming from the president of the United States. Benjamin Franklin said something, I'm not going to quote it verbatim because I'll butcher it, but he said something along the lines of, it's better to have 100 guilty people free than one innocent person suffer. And that's a philosophy that has existed in the United States for hundreds of years now. We have all collectively as Americans recognized the importance of due process, even if somebody is being accused of the most heinous crimes. Now we have a president of the United States who's saying, you know what, screw all of that. I don't like these people. I think these people are bad for America. So this whole due process thing, the finding out if they're actually bad people, let's just skirt that and get to the part that I like. Let's just send them out of the country. And then I get up on my podium. I take credit for protecting the American people. And that's the typical Trump game. But I think any American that, you know, is rational, Democrat, Republican, independent, whatever, recognizes the importance of the Fifth Amendment, of the 14th Amendment that protects you as an American from just being presumed guilty and not even an American citizen. Anybody has this right to due process. Donald Trump doesn't think so. It's part of his, you know, dictatorial tirade that he's gone on since January 20th.
Yeah, he said he wanted to be a dictator for just one day, but as it turns out, it was more than just one day. And when the president, yeah, and when the president starts talking about just dispensing with due process for people who are, you know, of questionable legal status in the country, I mean, what's the leap to no, we're not going to have due process for other people? I mean, that's the scary part of this. And Harry, I mean, I have to think that, and I know you can't speak on behalf of all young people and all Gen Zers, but my sense of it is that there is a real, you know, kind of stirring inside that generation right now over a lot of what's taking place right now when it comes to Kilmar and these mass deportations.
Yeah, I mean, it's stunning for me. Like, I have friends who are not all that politically involved. You know, they vote occasionally, they read the news every once in a while, and then I talk to people who are more politically involved on the right. And you know, there's some deviation here and there, but for the most part, I'm just hearing across the board that people are like really grossed out by what we're seeing. They're just picking people off of the street, making them disappear, and then they show up in an El Salvador prison with no
Yeah.
ability to even challenge that. So you're right. I can't speak for all young people. I don't claim to speak for all young people, but from my personal experience, which is anecdotal, people are really just grossed out by what Donald
Yeah.
Trump was doing here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna attempt to get you to speak on behalf of all young people or many young people in just a moment here because I want to talk about this, and it has something to do with the issue of immigration. Does anybody remember how Donald Trump once disparaged migrants coming across the border from Mexico as rapists and killers? And remember how he said they're not sending their best. Much could be said about the people Trump has sent to Washington to work in his administration. Witness Pete Hegseth, who has been quite the chatty Cathy over the Signal app, the nexus of the scandal, otherwise known as Signalgate. And this brings me to this. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says Trump is, quote, standing strongly behind Pete Hegseth, and that Trump feels his defense secretary is, quote, doing a tremendous job. I've covered the White House a couple of times under Obama and under Trump. You kind of, you know, is he currently standing strongly behind him? Is he standing strongly behind him because he's going to push him under the bus? I mean, these are all questions that I have. But I mean, you know, the way, I don't know if you saw this, Harry, but the way Hegseth was defending himself at the White House Easter egg roll, and he's blaming the leakers, he's blaming the media, and yet he's the guy that, you know, put it in the Signal chat. You know, I mean, he did this.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing. It's like he's trying to put it's kind of the Trump playbook, you know what I mean? Just blame everybody except yourself for when something goes wrong. He just implemented it in front of his children, in front of his wife, in a
Yeah, I saw
very
that.
public way at the Easter egg roll, saying, you know what, it's actually the media who is wrong for talking about this. You know, they're full of hoaxes and things like that. He used a bunch of buzzwords. But yeah, no, I mean, that's what he's doing. He's just no accountability whatsoever, when, as you correctly pointed out, he's the guy who created the group chat with his wife, with his brother, with his lawyer, and many other people and shared that information. It's just no accountability with this administration ever.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing too is, you know, as you said, he not only shared this with, you know, people on the National Security Council and people at high levels of the administration. He shared this with family members, with his personal lawyer. You know, and the fact that they're dancing on a head of a pin as to whether or not this is classified information. You know, NBC is reporting they named the general who gave him the information that he passed on, and it is specifically the type of stuff that you would never want to put in these chats. But I mean, speaking of Caroline Leavitt, I mean, the reason why I brought her up is, you know, the other thing that happened at the White House today. She invited Tim Pool,
Yes.
the podcaster. He's from the right, I think. He's from the right side of things.
Yeah.
She invited him to be in that new media seat, asking questions in the White House briefing room. He did this despite not wearing a suit. He gave Zelensky a hard time for not wearing a suit, and yet he was not wearing. He had the beanie on. He had the whole Tim Pool outfit. I just, I feel a little icky even talking about the guy, but I mean, Harry, this is sort of in your wheelhouse. How the hell did this guy get into the White House briefing room to ask these questions?
It's such a good question because when I think of the White House briefing room, I think of folks like yourself who are qualified. I think of folks like Caitlin Collins. I think of these really, really great journalists who have dedicated their lives to finding the truth, not, what a party says, but the truth. And then you pan, barring the Fox News people, and you see Tim Pool sitting there in his zip up hoodie, his beanie, and he's asking the most absurd questions to Caroline Levitt. He got the first question of the
I
day.
saw
She
that.
went directly to him, and he went on this tirade of, oh, again, the media in the room with us are hoaxers, they're liars. It is just, I think the word icky when you used it is correct. I feel like
Yeah.
just weird knowing that this man who has spread the worst conspiracy theories of them all is sitting in the White House press briefing room, which should be a place of honor and integrity and truth, but has now been, by this administration, turned into, a soapbox, a place where, their allies get to voice their questions. And if anybody asks a question that's a little bit difficult, they say, not answering it, you're fake news, and then they move on. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I bring it up is, Harry, and again, I don't want to have you out as somebody who speaks on behalf of all young people in the world, but one of the things that I think the Trump people might have gotten right during the 2024 campaign is the way they drew upon new media, independent media, podcasters, guys on the right, guys sitting in their underwear in their mother's basement, doing whatever, talking into a microphone. Oh, wait a minute. No, I swear I'm not wearing, I'm wearing something besides underwear. But anyway, no, but it is kind of, I have to say, it is remarkable how they were able to draw upon that as an asset, as a resource during that campaign. And I wonder if you think perhaps the Democrats came up a little short in that category. What's happening now? I mean, you're on with me now. You're somewhat in demand. Obviously, I saw you have 1 million+ followers on TikTok. I mean, there's obviously an appetite and a hunger for this, and this is an avenue that I think maybe the Democratic Party just hasn't tapped into enough.
Yeah, I mean, as a creator that lived through the 2024 election, I can easily say that the Democrats have just not done enough when it comes to tapping in to new media. And this pains me to say, but something that Donald Trump did really well throughout the campaign was being willing to go anywhere, talking to anybody in any media forum, even if he didn't really understand it. Like, when he was doing that live stream with Aiden Ross, for example, it's very clear that Donald Trump is completely oblivious. He has like no idea what's going on and doesn't understand it at all. But he at least went there. And a lot of these people who watch someone like Aiden Ross haven't really heard from a politician directly before. They're kind of just on a totally different side of the internet. So the Democrats have to realize that the new meeting them where they're at is not necessarily door knocking. It's not going door to door. It's going on these social media platforms, going and talking to these independent media folks and spreading our messages as far as we can. The Republicans have learned that so far. The Democrats haven't. But I think that since the election, a lot of Democrats have started to caught on and made the necessary changes.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to a number of House members who have said, "Oh, yeah, I need to come on your show, Jim. This is exactly what we need to be doing." And I'm thinking to myself, "Hey, I am not this young, a rising star in independent media. I mean, I'm doing okay, but nobody's going to call me young." But I mean, Harry, I mean, this is something that the Democrats have just not done well, and I'm wondering, is it too late? Do you see the beginnings of maybe that act getting, put together on the part of the Democrats?
Well, look, I'd like to believe it's not too late. I'd like to believe that the Democrats can still make the changes and talk to the folks that we need to. But we need to do it quickly because, the midterms are in 2026. That feels like a long way away, but it's really not in terms of campaigning. So we really have to jump on this now. And I'm really encouraged by what you just said, House members reaching out to you. I had the honor of speaking to senators like Cory Booker, Adam Schiff,
Right.
and they like made the effort to go on these platforms, which I thought was so impressive. But like, we need to make these changes now. And any outside firm or group that's saying, no, let's just stick to TV ads needs to be out of politics. They need
Yeah.
to get lost.
And Harry, you kind of do these debates with folks from other sides of the political spectrum and so on. You do this on TikTok, is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
How does that? I mean, how do you do that? How do those discussions go? I mean, one of the things that I see directed at you, Harry. I mean, there's a lot of people in MAGA world who don't like you, and they go after you. And they say unkind things, and
Yeah.
they'll take. I mean, this reminds me of what I went through covering Trump the first time around. They'll take pictures of you that maybe it wasn't the best, freeze frame of you making a face or whatever, and they'll
Yeah.
turn that into a meme. What has that been like for you? You're on the early side of your years. That's a lot to go through.
Yeah. I just got asked this question recently of like, does it ever bother you? And my answer is always no, because I'm so flattered that these like middle-aged men who are sitting at their laptops in their basement get so angered by me
Yeah,
advocating for what I believe in. But no, it doesn't bother me at all. You've been through it. I'm going through it. It happens to so many people.
yeah.
What keeps me going is the reason I started this for. I want to push back on Trump. I want to fight for what's right. And these MAGA lunatics can yap at me in my comments all they want. They can take all the Photoshopped photos and go crazy. But it's not going to change the goal of advocating for what I believe America should look like and advocating for what I believe in.
Yeah, it reminds me of that. What's that Parker Posey line from White Lotus 2? What are you doing with all these middle-aged weirdos? Is that what it?
Yeah, yeah,
But I
exactly.
mean, it's not your fault. I mean, they're the ones coming after you. But I have to say, for all middle-aged weirdos out there, if you are spending 1 second of your time messing with Harry Sisson, you really need to re-examine what's happening in your
Yeah.
life. I just,
Some,
let that be an endorsement of you, Harry. I mean, honestly.
I agree. It's mostly like on Twitter, especially middle-aged men who are like taking photos of me, then putting it into Photoshop and then editing, inappropriate or just something gross into the photo or whatever it might be. And it's like on a level, on a human level, I almost feel bad for them because it's like something must have gone wrong to lead you down this path of like photoshopping 22 years old. You're like, you gotta find a hobby or do something better
Did you
with
say
your
you're
time.
22, Harry?
I'm 22. Yeah.
Oh my God. I just got heart palpitations.
Jim, you don't look a day over 30, man.
Oh yeah, thanks a lot. No, I appreciate that. No,
Yeah.
but Harry, the other question I have is what the view is of legacy media, because it's funny when people throw around the term legacy media. It's folks on the left who kind of throw that around. I remember Sarah Palin, she would say the lamestream media, then Donald Trump picked up on it, and fake news, enemy of the people, and so on. And people on the left don't call the press the enemy and that sort of a thing, but they do use the term legacy media in a derogatory way. And I'm wondering if just younger folks feel that way, especially younger folks on the left. They're just sort of done with, some of these brand name outlets. I don't encourage that. I mean, I definitely think keep the pressure on them so they keep asking the hard questions. But your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I might differ from my generation a little bit on this topic. I think a lot of people in Gen Z like don't really pay attention to traditional media. They don't
Mm,
necessarily go to CNN or the New York Times to get information about a breaking news story. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people turn to social media. Now, that could be a good thing and a bad thing. A good thing in the sense that like folks like yourself exist on social media and you double, triple, quadruple check your sources. But on the
yeah.
flip side, there are people who don't. There are people who just run with headlines and run with misinformation. And it's really easy for young people who are not super informed and not super media literate to kind of fall into the trap of listening to this misinformation. So I think that's a problem with Gen Z. But from my perspective, I don't really like the term legacy media. I think it's a little bit derogatory. But
Yeah.
I think that so many folks in legacy media, as we're discussing right now, like CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post, whatever. Again, these are people who've dedicated their lives to journalism. They've dedicated their lives to the truth. And I've talked to some people at these outlets. As I mentioned, they double, quadruple, triple check their sources before they put anything out. They really
Yeah.
care about getting it right. So I always encourage people to rely on these sources as opposed to like your favorite social media creator who, hasn't
You
done
gotta
this
have
at
it
all.
all. You gotta have
Yeah.
a healthy diet of, everything, and that's what I tell people all the time. And there are people, in legacy media, whatever you wanna call it, brand name media, mainstream media, who are taking courageous stands. I mean, just today, the, executive producer of 60 Minutes, he resigned. Bill Owens, a guy I worked with a long time ago, I'm not gonna say how long ago. He was the executive producer of 60 Minutes. He said he would resign today. This is in the New York Times, because he had lost his journalistic independence. He is only the third person to run the program in its 57-year history. And when the executive producer of 60 Minutes is resigning, and he's only the third person to be the executive producer in the history of 60 Minutes. I mean, that tells you that we've got some big problems on our hands. I mean, that's a concern.
It's incredibly concerning. I mean,
Yeah.
this is, a continued theme for Trump. I mean, throughout his time running for office or even being in office, he's called for MSNBC and CNN to be shut down
Yeah.
just broadly, completely violating the First Amendment. And now we're seeing pressure on news outlets like ABC with, George Stephanopoulos, who had the verdict or the
Yeah.
settlement, I should say. And now the 60 Minutes executive producer is resigning. I mean, we are going down a very dark path, and it's incredibly scary that we're still less than 100 days in. Like, this is
Yeah.
less than 100 days
I
into
know.
Trump's term, you know?
I know it's been 100 days of hell, and and a lot of people are feeling it right now. Harry, it has been it's been so much fun talking to you. I hope we can keep doing this.
Yeah.
And you hang in there, man. Don't let the middle-aged weirdos get you down.
Well, likewise, I appreciate the conversation. I'll still be a fan of you. I'm going to read your stuff all the time. And thank you for having me on. We should do it again sometime. It was cool.
Okay, sounds good. Check out Harry on all the socials and on Substack. He's got a new Substack. Harry, great to see you. Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Harry Sisson. Okay.
Follow Blue Eye Media for exclusive insights and breaking news sources from global-friendly outlets that you won't get from the mainstream TV and radio outlets of America. Learn how to play the flute of the globe and learn the real truth.